Hi out there, it's me, Brianna, and you are listening to Are We Caught Up Yet? Marvel Edition. You can find us on youtube.com/SaveTheGameMedia and podcast services. If you do want to show Save the Game Media some extra love and get early access to all of our content, you can find us on patreon.com/SaveTheGameMedia. With all that fun stuff out of the way, today I'm joined by my co-host and friend, Sam. Hi, how are you?
I think that's, you said that with more gusto and more energy than either of us actually have. That was impressive.
Thank you. I'm using techniques from when I was a customer service rep at Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not full blown customer service voice, but using the skills a little. How are you?
I am well. Been quite busy today, so sort of this is a bit of a breathing room for me, which is nice. Yeah, I'm good overall.
Good.
How about you?
Doing pretty good. Just living life, I guess. Just working, putting out fires at work. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get tagged today, like 20 times. I got tagged last Monday so many times that my boss messaged me. And she was like, we need to come up with a different way for people to contact you because everybody's contacting you for like literally everything. And I was like, it must be bad if you noticed it. And then when I came back on Tuesday, sure enough, it was bad. But yeah, it's nice to be needed, but also
Sure.
doing everything at work is tiring.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Have you been watching anything?
Not outside of Shogun, which I'm still slowly catching up on, working my way through. Still just as excellent. Certainly up there as one of the best things I've seen in the past few years, television wise. Yeah, very, very. If I would say, if people have Disney Plus, you should be watching it. I think it is a compulsory watch if you have that streaming service. Like, you are doing yourself a disservice by not watching it because of how good it is. In terms of how Japan is depicted, like, all of the performances across the board are fantastic. Like, the production value on it is just ridiculous. And I know that we've talked about some like Marvel TV shows which have good production value for sure, and lots of CGI and all of that, but I said to my mum the other day, because she's watching it with me, it feels very unlike Disney Plus. It feels like it should be on HBO or something. It's got the kind of prestige prime time feel to it that like Disney Plus series have come close to. Like, I think that particularly in the early era, Marvel Disney Plus shows were like prime time. You have to be there every week to watch the next thing. But yeah, they haven't had something of this caliber, I think, in quite some time, arguably ever. So yeah, it's a very big get. I can never remember the main actor's name. He's so prolific. I think I know what it is, but I don't want to say it. No, I was right. Hiroyuki Sanada. I was right. Okay. Incredibly prolific Japanese actor. You have almost certainly seen him in something. because of how much work he's done. He is excellent here as he is everywhere else. The writing is just pitch perfect. It's a really good show.
I have not seen it, but my mom messaged me. I think she's caught up on it. She was telling me, she's so funny. She goes, yeah, but then it was in Japanese. And I was like, yeah, Mom, it's in Japan. She ended up doing it again. She started a different show and she was like, and then this one was in Japanese too. And I was like, oh, you just must be in your Japanese show era, Mom. What else? She's watching Monarch. That's the other one. She's funny.
Oh, the Godzilla thing.
Yeah. Apparently there's Japanese in that too. I told her just learn Japanese.
just learn it.
Yeah. I take Japanese classes once a week. It's not that bad. It's actually really fun, but
there you go.
Nobody asked, but I haven't watched anything. I have been like really, really bad with shows, like to the point where I'm not rewatching The Office anymore, even though I didn't even finish my rewatch. I am not watching like any TV like at all, even while I work, which is really weird for me because I usually can't work, like literally cannot work if I don't have something playing. But I've been listening to music mostly while I work. I think I've watched like very sporadically like 4 or 5 episodes of Merlin. So I have to watch that show in order to read the fan fiction that apparently is one of the best ever written. So have to watch the whole show, of course. And let's see. I'm sure there's something random. I've been starting a bunch of random shows and like nothing's been like catching my attention. There's a TV show on Netflix it's a documentary, like real life documentary, but it's by the people who did CSI, so kind of interesting.
Okay.
So yeah, murder.
Yeah.
That's I really haven't been able to watch any TV. I will say, just because I don't know why, like TV and anime in my head are like separate. I have been watching anime, but only at dinner. That's like the TV. We usually watch anime at dinner. Did finish Solo Leveling. I think I talked about it last week, but it's incredible. And I finished A Sign of Affection. Incredible. And that's it. And I only had like 1 episode left on both of those, so. But what I did watch is this show called What If? Was that a good transition?
I mean,
was it better than Taylor's yesterday?
Yes.
I can't even remember. There was a while back, you guys, when Taylor was like, speaking of this random video game, and then switched to something completely different. And I can't remember what the 2 connections was, but I just remember it was so jarring that we couldn't stop laughing. He's silly. General thoughts on What If season 1. Whew, man. The first couple of episodes, I was really having a hard time. I was really, really having a hard time those first couple of episodes. I think it was the first 3, not a fan. Not a fan. The rest, the other 6 episodes, I had a good time. And I would say overall, I enjoyed it. And those are my feelings.
Okay.
What about you?
Like, it's good. There's no denying that it's good. It it's so difficult because it's framed as an anthology series. So you go in knowing that realistically there isn't going to be connections between episodes and stuff. And it's just cool little, again, as the title suggests, what if this happened? What if that happened? And just giving twists on different scenarios that we've seen play out in the MCU thus far. What would happen? Just nice little, fun detours. But it's still, that doesn't change the fact that it ultimately does feel kind of redundant, in the sense that it's cool to see all of these things, but when the foundation and USP of Marvel and the MCU is the cohesion and everything tying into one another, is a detour like this worth it? Because what do we gain from this? Like, I think the animation style is really awesome. I think that they do really interesting things with camera work, and like fight choreography, visual effects stuff that might be a little bit harder to replicate or even just produce in live action. I like that we get spins on different characters. I think the detachedness from the rest of the MCU would be fine if there was a general sense of momentum in the series, but there isn't. There is no real thread through all of them that leads up to the finale. The finale just sort of turns back to face where we've come from and just goes scoop and drags all of it in, rather than it naturally building. And I don't know how exactly you would retool the series to accomplish that better.
Ooh, I think that's an easy one.
Well, I mean, there are of course plenty of options. I just don't know which is the best. But we can.
I think if they had just done The Gathering at the end of each episode, it would have been fine.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like, I guess, but I don't know if that alone is the remedy. It certainly would have made it better.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if it's like would fix everything, but I think that it would have been an easy, really easy way.
Yeah. But I think that overall, like, it's good stuff. Like, it's good animation. It's great that they got the majority of the voice cast. That's cool. And it is fun to see all these different scenarios, as disparate as they might feel. I also think that a criticism is that some of these episodes just feel way too short and therefore rushed.
Oh my god, if this had been longer, I would have not made it.
I guess we'll agree to disagree, because I feel like there were some things that were so incredibly rushed that I couldn't even really process what the through line of the story was and what was happening where. And But yeah, like
Maybe
it's
maybe
fine.
you're right. Maybe the length would have fixed it so that way I would have enjoyed it as well. But some of these I was like, if this stays for 1 minute longer, I'm gonna scream.
Yeah. So again, I'm not gonna sort of retread. It's good. It's just far off of how good it potentially could have been.
There's a whole other season. Who knows? Maybe that one will be great.
Maybe. Who knows?
Who knows? Not me. Um, what you have done if I just watched the whole thing? That does sound like something I'd do. Be like, I didn't even realize that there was a split.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Disney Plus makes that pretty hard to do, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
But it does still seem like something silly that I would do on accident.
maybe.
But I didn't, so it's okay. No need to cry. All right. We are just due to the nature of this show gonna just tackle it episode by episode. I think that's probably the only way to tackle this show. And spend a couple minutes on each episode. Before we do so, I wanted to say for soundtrack, a little disappointed about the Guardians one. Could have had some real cool moments there with licensed
Yeah,
music.
yeah. I think they're trying to keep the budget as restricted as possible.
Oh, all they needed one. Just borrow Sunflower. That would have been pretty
Not
cool.
everything has to be Spider-Verse. You recognize this?
No, I don't. That's why I bought that necklace. Sam, it's not my fault that that's the first song that came to mind. I just have Spider-Verse on the brain all the time. If I could tattoo it on the inside of my brain, I would.
Don't do that.
Is it going to? Okay. Season 1, episode 1. What if Captain Carter were the first Avenger? I'm just gonna start out by saying maybe I'm silly. Maybe I'm not remembering. So correct me if I'm wrong. I felt really lost into how her being in the room. Sorry, not that her being in the room segued to her becoming like the Captain America or whatever, but how her being in the room caused like all of that. Like I don't remember there being all that damage to the room. Maybe it's because it was like animated or something. I don't know. I don't remember that.
Well, the difference was that if I remember correctly, the difference was that in the first Avenger, the film, they go up to a viewing room rather than
Mhm.
staying down in the operating theater.
Mhm.
So I think that's the, not that it's overly important, but I think that is the determining factor in how the room becomes more damaged, because the spy that detonates the explosive isn't up in
Okay.
the viewing room. He's down right next to
Okay.
where everything's happening.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will say I did like Peggy as like Captain Carter.
Mhm.
Thought that she was an incredibly awesome character. Really, actually, kind of disappointed that we don't get more of her, like in the
Mhm.
actual MCU.
Yeah.
How romantic it would have been if they had both been turned into super soldiers and frozen together, and then they were both Captain America together. That would have been real romantic.
Not sure on that one.
Why?
Well,
Sam's a hater of true love.
Moving on.
Do you have anything to say about this episode? I don't really have much beyond I did not have a good time watching it. However, I did really like Captain Carter.
Yeah, I think like she probably does the most interesting stuff physically that we've seen a Captain America do. Very
It's interesting how she uses the shield differently, huh?
exactly, yeah. And Hayley Atwell is obviously great doing the voice as she is when she's playing Peggy in real life. Of course, not having this amount of stuff to do. I think the episode, this is one of the ones where I feel like it just is so fast. Like we start and she's getting the serum instead of Steve because Steve is injured, and then Steve is in a big Iron Man suit, and then they're fighting a tentacle thing that's coming out of a portal. It's like what is happening? And I feel like for as cool of a character as Captain Carter is, I feel like she of any like original take on a character deserved more space to breathe, I think. Particularly with how cool like the sort of one shot thing of her flying through the plane and then jumping back out, and all of that is so cool. I wish we had seen more of it. And I get that like the portal stuff kind of had to happen to give us the essential time jump thing that Captain America normally has, but it was incredibly breakneck, and I don't feel like I got enough from Captain Carter, because they did kind of frame this series in its entirety as Captain Carter's thing. Like if you look at any posters or promotional material, Captain Carter is like front and center. And it's like, I don't think that the show itself, whilst it justifies it, it doesn't necessarily fulfill that concept. It proves why Captain Carter could very easily have her own show, but this isn't that. So yeah, bit mixed on this one. I love the character and everything that she does, but I think the context and the episode that she's placed in is way too rushed, bit too messy for me personally.
Yeah. I will say one thing I thought was funny was that I was like, oh, so animated show, we immediately pull out the tentacles. Oh, okay. Immediately putting tentacles into an animated show. Okay, yeah, it was so silly. So silly. I really don't have anything else to add onto this. You said it mostly. I really don't know if length would have fixed this episode for me. I just feel like not. Maybe it would have, but I just feel like not much happened besides like, oh my god, look how cool she is. Okay, it's over. But like not in a short way. It was just like, oh, look at her fight. Oh my god, look, she's still fighting. Oh my god, look, she's fighting. And I was like, does this never end? Like that. Okay, episode 2. What if T'Challa became a Star-Lord?
Yes.
I have beef with this episode. Not that I don't think I love the concept of him becoming a Star-Lord and how he like fixes Thanos with like a conversation, and then like the repeated theme of like, no, that's just genocide. That did crack me up. So there's a lot of good things I liked about this, but like the whole logic of like, yeah, we just kidnapped this random kid out of Wakanda, first of all. And second of all, like they're like, "Oh, we're just not going to put him back." I don't it doesn't track for me even with like the justifications of like, "Oh, you're my son." Or whatever. Like it just I didn't like that part. I just thought it was stupid. Give me a better reason.
Yeah, but I mean the Ravagers are idiots.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair.
and like, whilst it's idiotic to like our human brains to be like, to put it bluntly, how could you mistake a white kid for a black kid? It's like these aliens that Yondu is blue, so it's like I don't think they have the same preconceptions of what a given person might look like. But I mean, even
Right.
if it is just the stupidity of them happening to see a kid on the wrong continent that looks completely different, that's just funnier because of how absurdly stupid it is.
I mean, I don't think that I like care. Like, I understand what you're saying, like, where they're like, they don't really, like, they wouldn't really know to check, white versus black or whatever. Like, I get that part. But, like, I think it's just the whole, like, you stole somebody from Wakanda and, what's his face? Is Yondu's, like, reasoning of, like, why they didn't send him back just, like, didn't check out for me. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, but Yondu is/was like a scumbag.
Yeah.
And he kept Peter, and obviously he didn't say like, I don't know, Michigan was destroyed, or wherever Peter was from. I can't remember. He didn't say that, or he didn't say America was destroyed.
Yeah.
But he still kept Peter, not necessarily fully against his will, because we don't really know exactly how Peter was in his youth, to begin with, anyway. But yeah, like Yondu would just give any reason so that he could keep T'Challa in the same way that he wanted to keep Peter, because he was useful as a kid. So,
well, what did you think of this episode as a whole?
I think it's good. I think it's, in terms of like pacing, remarkably better than the first episode. I think that the concepts that they give are thoroughly explained enough. The idea of like what's it called, the embers of Genesis, which is just a thing that's able to feed everyone, and people striving to try and get that. And I think like the altruistic elements of T'Challa as a character, as we knew him, are present here in a way that is believable. Like you mentioned, the comedy of T'Challa being able to turn Thanos into a good guy and sort of talk him out of doing it. It's funny. It's a good comedic prospect, but I think also it is reflective of how charismatic and beloved T'Challa was. And obviously, like, contextually, this came out after Chadwick Boseman's death. Like, this is his last performance as T'Challa. So I think that there is obviously the script was written to a degree before he passed. So like the sentiment would have probably been there anyway, in terms of like Thanos being turned into a good guy, because there is an interaction between T'Challa and Thanos. So like, but I think that my point is that they probably try to accentuate that even more, because it is either by coincidence or intentionally, this has become like a posthumous tribute to T'Challa as a character and to Chadwick Boseman, obviously. So I think that, like, as a last hurrah for him, I think that it holds a closer place in my heart than it probably would have done otherwise without that context. But like, it's still good. It's still cool. I like the sort of sci-fi. I like that the Guardians type humor is still here. Yeah, like you I don't really know that I have any complaints. How are the Ducks back? It's great.
Yeah, I would say I definitely don't think that I enjoyed this one very much. I think that, I don't know, it just feels like not much happened, even though I know stuff did happen. Like I know stuff happened. It just feels like not really. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It just was like, oh, okay. That was an episode. There were things that I did, like little pieces that I loved about it, like the comedy about him being like, oh no, that's just a genocide. Like, again, I thought that was really funny. I really, again, still wish that they had put that licensed music, even if it was just the one song at the beginning, would have been cool. And I really enjoyed that they had like little pieces of like the Wakanda music playing every once in a while.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that. Okay, next one. What if the world lost its mightiest heroes? Which is Nick Fury trying to launch the Avengers, but there's a serial killer taking them out.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first on this one? What are your thoughts?
I think conceptually, this could have been one of the coolest episodes. I think in execution, it's arguably probably the weakest. Like the idea of an Ant-Man being like this invisible assassin that is taking people out. That's really cool. And like, as much as it's like a bit contrived and cliche, the idea of it being because Hope died when she was working for Shield, like it works. Like it's been played out thousands of times across all media, but like it's fine. It still functions. I just, like you said just now about the Guardians episode feeling like nothing really happened. I feel much the same way about this, where it's like, okay, somebody died, and then somebody died, and then somebody died, and then somebody died, and then Loki shows up,
and the Ant-Man dude got bitch slapped,
and then he's really angry, and then it's the end.
Yep.
Yeah, like I feel like this is one of the more disappointing episodes.
I agree, but I think for different reasons. I think that I did not like the answer that this was an Ant-Man. I thought that was kind of dumb. I will say I laughed really, really hard when like Nick Fury, that's not him, like slaps him. That was so funny to me. Other than that, I didn't really enjoy this. I think that the setup was interesting of like, oh, there's people killing the Avengers. Who is it? Excuse me. But I didn't like the answer. I thought that was, I don't want to say silly, but it was just weird. Like, I was like, couldn't they have, like, I don't know. Like, I would have literally been excited for probably anybody else. I was just like, okay.
But I think if you had anybody else, it wouldn't be a mystery because you would have very definitive signs of, you know,
Well, I mean,
Thor
if we're,
using his hammer or something. You know what I mean? I
I
feel
mean,
like Ant-Man is the only stereotypical hero that wouldn't really have anything that could implicate them.
I think they could have figured it out.
Maybe.
It's too late now. Anything else to say on that one?
No.
Okay, next one is what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? I thought that this was going to be literal, to be completely honest. I saw the name of the episode and I was like, how does that work?
He dies.
I was very confused.
I am going to go out on a limb, and by go out on a limb, I mean not really. This is the best episode. Like it just is.
I think,
think
yeah, I would agree with that.
there are certainly other episodes that are strong in different ways, but I think as a complete package, as a self-contained story, this is not only super interesting, visually very compelling, introducing lots of different concepts that we haven't ever seen before, doing interesting things with animation and shots and framework. I think it's unparalleled, really, by any other episode. Yeah, I don't know that I really have any complaints at all.
I do think that this is an incredibly compelling episode. I think that the fact that like they saw this through to the end, because I think there was an easy out there where it's like, oh, he combined with his other half and then he realized everything was, like that it couldn't be, and he fixed everything. Like, I think there was an easy out there towards the end, but they didn't. Like, they fully committed to it. And they're like, this Doctor Strange has determined that like he just like literally can't continue and is being selfish as he is known for. And what happens if we follow that line through to the end? I thought that was interesting. I think it can sometimes be difficult to commit in that way to storylines, but they did it.
Yeah,
they did the thing, and we got to see more tentacles.
Swerving right past that comment, I think it's also just the idea of how destructive to oneself and to one's environment using that kind of dark, forbidden magic can be, which is something that you wouldn't necessarily typically expect from the Marvel that we've had thus far. Again, like you say, they sort of follow it through, which is maybe not a good sign considering the sort of stuff that Wanda's up to as of late. But the one thing I will not necessarily point out, but just sort of highlight, is that this episode does introduce the idea of absolute points in time, which is how they phrase it, which is essentially like, I think, relatively easy to comprehend. It is a canon event, right? It's a thing that has to happen or will happen no matter what. That is like for one reason or another, a foundational pillar that is holding up reality and can't really be disrupted. And that's sort of formally, very not subtly, but through a show that not everybody is going to watch, a concept that is funneled into the MCU at large, but was introduced here. So you can see like going from WandaVision and Loki with like Nexus events and Nexus beings, and now absolute points in time, we are building a mythos around how the universe works. It's a bit wishy-washy. It's not super clear, but there are breadcrumbs being laid that can very easily turn into threads that are pulled on.
Yeah. I do think it's one of the things that I'm slightly changing subjects, but still the same episode. One of the things that I found really compelling with this was like the way that seeing, what is her name? I can't even remember her name. Christine? Yep. In the way that seeing like Christine die again and again kind of messed him up. And then like the consequences of that, I thought that was really interesting as well. I really, really enjoyed that he went back in time and met like one of the other masters or whatever. I thought that was incredibly interesting as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just like really cool pieces here that they're just like, yeah, they really ate with that episode, you know?
They did.
Okay.
Speaking of eating.
You're just so good at transitions. I think you should host everything just for the transitions. No. The next episode is What If Zombies? We'll say. I'm not even gonna lie about it. I did think about what happens if there's a zombie apocalypse when there's heroes around. And I did not like the answer that they came up with. However, I will say I was really impressed that they kind of followed like the zombie movie formula. They kind of stayed true to like the way that zombie movies work, like the don't split up, like there's always like that one extra thing. I don't know. Like there's just they really followed the formula in their own Marvel way, and I did enjoy that. And I love that they went there.
Yeah. I think that it's undeniably a very strong episode. And obviously like the novelness of it, of the concepts, and how different it is to everything else we've seen. It does do a lot of heavy lifting, but that being said, like you say, them playing into tropes and them, I think, actually using a lot of the survivors' abilities or powers in smart, clever ways, helps you to buy in as a viewer, and take it a bit more seriously. You know, they're still cracking jokes, and it's still some of the Marvel humor that you know. But I think it's not like full on Shaun of the Dead type parody of the genre.
No.
It's towing a line between, there's actually some kind of disturbing stuff in here, but they also have plenty of moments of levity. Yeah, and I think like the idea of, you know, the Mind Stone being able to cure people, and that Vision is trying to keep Wanda alive, you know, that's such an interesting dilemma of Vision being as powerful as he is and Wanda being as powerful as she is, them both being the crux of the thing, but because Wanda is infected and she can't be cured, what does Vision do, you know?
Feed her pieces of human. That's what
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that they introduced really interesting, like not necessarily fully formed moral dilemmas and stuff, but I think that they use the established character relationships and dynamics to a very effective degree.
Yeah. So my thing with like when I always think about like what I want out of like when I would think about like, oh, zombie apocalypse with heroes or whatever, I don't think I really wanted the heroes to be the ones that were zombies. Um I just thought it would be like a lot more compelling to see like how they would deal with the zombie apocalypse. So I think that that's the part that I didn't really like. Not that some of them were turned into zombies, but like that was kind of like the whole thing was like, what if the Avengers were zombies and they had to fight amongst themselves? And I wanted them to just be dealing with like zombie apocalypse stuff and not like that stuff. But it's still a good episode regardless. And we are officially adding to the simplest. I wasn't joking. Bucky in this episode specifically, this one specifically, long hair, so handsome. So handsome. So I am adding this version of Bucky very specifically from this episode to the simplest. I'm putting him at spot 3 above Doctor Strange and under Okoye. And
Okay.
he's very handsome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have been begging for this specific type of content from Marvel for years, because you may not know this, but Marvel Zombies is a very popular comic run, where they actually realistically are, for the most part, doing what you wanted this episode to be doing. Obviously, there are heroes that are turned in that comic run, and some do turn throughout, but it is a lot about dealing with heroes dealing with. I mean, well, actually, technically, that's incorrect, because as the series gets later on, things happen where it's almost the complete inverse, which I'm not going to get into. That may be future spoilers. And the listeners. What I will say, and this isn't spoilers, we are still animation getting a dedicated Marvel Zombies show.
Oh.
In the near-ish future.
That's exciting.
So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see now that they have more runway. And I think it's like not necessarily R-rated, but like mature, actually mature. So that is even more interesting, because what are they going to do if they aren't having to hold back, you know, in terms of how visceral everything might be. So, yeah, but no, very good episode.
I agree with that. Next one is, what if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark? Killmonger is such an interesting character. And this episode made me sad all over again that they got rid of him.
Yeah.
What a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I will say this is probably one of my least favorite episodes, though. Again, kind of like, I know technically it comes back in some way at the finale and whatnot, but I don't know. I feel like, and this might sound ridiculous considering what's in the episode, but I kind of feel like it toes too close to the line of what actually happened. Like, I don't know that it diverges enough in interesting ways outside of character interplay and getting to see Killmonger sort of serve his own ulterior motives. I kind of just, this episode feels boring to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that do I think this episode is boring? I mean, I definitely don't think that this was one of my favorite episodes. I think this was basically I think this is like middle of the pack for me. But I don't think that I was like bored with it necessarily, but I also think that I'm trying to think of how to phrase it, because I did enjoy what they did with the story. I think they followed through on a lot of the I think I was ready for Killmonger to kind of flip the switch at any point, but he really was towing the line of making it seem like he was a good guy, and it's not until they kind of realize oh, he's the one that killed Tony Stark. He's the one that killed T'Challa. I think that he was doing an incredibly good job of I think, let me rephrase that. I think the writing was done incredibly well, where I kept thinking he was going to do something else and then he didn't. And I thought that the way that they played out his story was really interesting. So I think that I wasn't bored. I had a good time, but I still don't think it was one of my favorite episodes.
Okay.
And again, the music was pretty good this episode. It's true. It's true. Next one is, what if Thor were an only child?
Yes.
This episode was very silly, but I thought it was good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is obviously part of my commentary earlier, saying they do some really cool, interesting stuff with fight choreography. I think that putting Captain Marvel and Thor against one another, actually fighting each other, obviously they've sort of semi-teamed up before technically, but never actually come to blows, and that's compelling because essentially, two gods duking it out. Even though the context of the episode itself is relatively silly, I think they do some really interesting stuff, which I'd love to see replicated somehow in some context in live action, not necessarily between these two characters specifically, but just this kind of action is a good escalation, I think, from stuff that we've seen thus far. Because it sort of, well, I was going to say it verges, but it does dip its toe pretty heavily into anime level fight stuff, zipping around the world and slamming into mountains and stuff. It's I think there is space for that, given how ridiculously overpowered some of these characters seem to be. Yeah, it's a good bit of dumb fun.
Yeah, definitely anime-esque. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked that they were as soon as they weren't brothers, I love that Thor and Loki were we're brothers. That one was silly. I enjoyed seeing all of the random characters that were at the party, but they don't really call out. Rocket was there. I think Korg was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of random characters that just show up to the party. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I will also say I think there is a taste of what the show could have been in what you were talking about in terms of how to make it better, in that this episode ends with Ultron showing up, which obviously isn't something we learn about until this next episode we're talking about. So I assume it might have, like, in the split second that it happened in this episode, been a little bit confusing, but you were able to lead right into the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these were released week by week. So it's like, in terms of how every other episode thus far had played out, this one was quite confusing because it almost felt as if something had gone wrong and they'd uploaded like half of the episode or something, or just before the episode had its big conclusion, the episode ended, because it was about Thor being unruly and fighting people and all of that, and then Ultron shows up with Infinity Stones, and you're like, oh, here we go, okay, another big fight. Now that Thor's calmed down a little bit, that's going to be interesting. And then the episode ends, which obviously isn't the point. The point is that it's setting up that Ultron from the next episode is traveling around the multiverse. But it's weird that kind of little bit of bleeding crossover only really starts now.
Yeah. I mean, I liked the bleeding crossover.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in the same vein, like, I think they easily could have done that with the rest of the episodes. They didn't have to do it the same for all of the episodes. Like, they could have done something like simple for each one. And I think it would have been fine. Case point being WandaVision, like the first 2-3 episodes, they had weird stuff in there that you're like, what is going on? But they didn't explain it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this would have been a little bit longer, right? Like 7 weeks of no explanation available.
Yeah.
But I think they could have done it in a way that would have made sense.
Yeah. Agreed.
Is season 2 What If We Made This Show But Better?
Damn. Zing.
So episode 8, what if Ultron won? So basically, from what I understand, could be wrong, it seems like everybody in this world is dead besides Natasha and Clint, and that's it.
Pretty much. You would assume there's probably like stringents of survivors elsewhere on the planet, but
You think? You don't think everybody's dead already because they don't know how to survive against killer robots?
I would find it hard to believe that like every single person except for these specific two are dead. I don't know that these two are interacting with anybody else.
I think I'd believe it. And yeah, I think it's just like suspense of disbelief for me. I believe it.
Okay.
They're the last ones because she said she didn't want to go back because everybody's gone. And she could have meant literally everybody's gone, or she could have just meant all of the Avengers are gone. We don't know.
I've always read it that she just meant that anything that would cause her to stay is gone. Anybody that would cause her to stay is gone because Clint's gone and whatnot.
She doesn't know if her sister's gone.
Maybe she doesn't have a sister in this one.
That's crazy. Okay, so what did I think about this event or this episode? I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting. I think that it being a whole piece with the next episode is like obviously necessary. Like you can't really fully judge this episode on its own. I did kind of like that moment of awareness where he's like narrating and then like realizes what's going on. I really liked that. Like I thought that was a really, really cool moment.
Yeah. Because you got like a very brief snippet of that in the Doctor Strange episode as well, where Doctor Strange kind of overhears the narration, but nothing's really. It's like not a blink and you'll miss it, but it's sort of disregarded very quickly. It's not lingered on.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, so it's like the idea that you can reach a power level that is so high that you sort of begin to transcend the confines of your given reality, I guess, become more godlike is the idea, right? So yeah, I like that. Yes, the Watcher is there to narrate to us and is technically an entity within the wider multiverse, like he does exist as a character, but the idea that he is literally just there in his place narrating, that's pretty humorous, I think.
Yeah.
That obviously he's aware that we're here as viewers watching it, but he doesn't know that if you're tuned in enough in these different worlds, you could hear him as well. I think that's quite funny.
Yeah, I enjoyed that moment. So, would that theoretically make us more powerful than the Watcher if we're watching the Watcher? Or is it like a
Who watches the Watcher exactly? Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
technically.
I can't decide if it's like a we're just more powerful thing or if it's like a he's letting us thing. Could be
Maybe.
either. Things to think on.
Yeah, but I like that this feels more cohesive and is, because I know that technically, like the last episode does try to pull all the disparate threads together, but I feel that this stuff that we see here is more natural because it gets crazy Spider-Verse esque when the Watcher is fighting Ultron and they're going through all the different universes and stuff like that. Again, really cool visuals. But the idea that the Watcher has seen Stranger's reality and knows that he needs somebody of that power level, again, somebody that can acknowledge his existence and presence to help beat Ultron before he wins. I think that, I don't know, I feel like that this episode ties things together more neatly than the next episode does.
I think I would agree with that actually. I don't think that like I could have put my finger on it until you said it, but yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Because next episode does tie stuff together, but it's just, okay, we're just going to pull all the characters that you've seen thus far into this thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that makes sense for the finale, I suppose. But realistically, if you have Strange, do you need T'Challa as Star-Lord? Like, do you need Captain Carter? I know that they all, in their own weird, quirky little ways, justify them being there by doing a thing that only they could do. But I don't know, it feels less earned to me.
Have you watched Adventure Time?
No.
So there's a dude that's kind of like the Watcher that like kind of watches like the crew, like the Adventure Time crew. But there are these random episodes throughout the show where this character will appear, like the Watcher, and he's trying to teach the viewers a lesson and like tie all the episodes together. And so you'll see like little short pieces and it'll be like, what's the connection between all of these? And they're called Graybles. That's what this reminds me of. It's like, what are the connecting pieces between all of these episodes? What did we learn, kids? That's what that felt like.
Okay.
With them pulling it all together. I was like, oh my god, Adventure Time. So again, kind of leading into this last episode, what if the Watcher broke his oath? We got the team. We got the dream team of all of these random one-off people.
The Guardians of the Multiverse.
Including Gamora, who didn't show up in any of these.
Interesting, yes. Contextually, there was an episode that was being made for What If that was a version of What If, like this isn't like the full concept of the episode, but it was like a version, a reality where Gamora killed Thanos, and this is technically spoiling one of the episodes in the future, but it doesn't matter really. And it was also conceited around the idea of what if Tony Stark got sent to Sakaar instead of the Hulk.
Oh, interesting.
So like a crossover there in that sense, that in the same way that Valkyrie was there with Thor in Ragnarok on Sakaar, you know, in the Colosseum, it was the idea of Tony being there instead and Gamora. That was cut. I can't remember the exact reason. I can't remember whether production on it was just pushed back or whether they decided that they wanted to save it. But yeah, it was pushed out of the season, but they still felt that it was okay to introduce the Gamora here and just explain that she killed Thanos, and everyone would be like, okay, she's a strong version of Gamora. Okay, cool. So it feels a bit shoehorned in, which it is.
Oh yeah, a little jarring for sure.
But it again, we're in the era of, with this show specifically, like, okay, cool, yeah, whatever. We're in a whole thing of
no, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. So
I was like, oh, okay,
yeah,
sure. I will say one of my pet peeves with this episode was this machine can only destroy the stones in my world. I was like,
bit contrived.
did you make it the wrong size? Like, it was just kind of dumb. But I think that was one of my biggest complaints with that.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a good episode. I like that they resolved it. I'm glad that Black Widow got sent somewhere else. I thought that was interesting, of like, oh, we're sending you somewhere that they lost their Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I liked that Captain Carter got to meet up with Steve again.
Yes.
I don't know. It was a good episode. I think overall just interested to see like if they do anything with this at all. Specifically, the thing that I could see them like not fully like using it for the show or the movies, but like maybe referencing it, is the Doctor Strange that is now kind of locked in this eternal battle. Or I guess babysitting an eternal battle.
Yeah.
Would be the better phrase. I could see them referencing him because he kind of exists outside of like time now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and like that was kind of, and like, sorry, just my thoughts on the episode. I think it's good. I will say that it like strangely feels kind of, like, yes, it feels kind of like a finale in the sense that there's all this culmination and bringing everybody together, but like they beat a bad guy, but the bad guys technically aren't beat. They're just in a little ball now.
Yep.
And then
they're in a snow globe.
Everyone goes off in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And you have like the mid credits of, again, like you say, Captain Carter finding Steve in the armor. Maybe a little Maybe something's gone wrong with Steve. Maybe does this universe have a Winter Soldier? But yeah, like I don't know. It feels like there's a whole lot of build up and like epic conclusion vibes to this show, to this episode, but I don't know that it lands it. It sort of ends. You're like, oh, okay. It feels kind of anticlimactic in that sense.
Yeah.
And I don't really have a one size fits all remedy to that, because I don't know that just killing Killmonger and Ultron would work either. It doesn't fall flat. It just falls.
Just exists.
Yeah, it just is, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like there's tons of cool stuff in this episode. Again, everybody gets like a shining moment, and there are really good visuals and all of this. Sound design in this episode, I think, was excellent. But yeah, it just sort of happens, which again, I guess is kind of like the sentiment of this whole show. It just sort of happens, and that's okay. Like, it's good.
Yeah.
But it just happens. And I think like
and more tentacles.
I'm not. No, stop. Speaking about like Gamora just randomly showing up and stuff, and bringing all of these different twists and takes on characters, I think like at the very least it's an effort from Marvel, alongside stuff like Loki, with variants, to make the general public more accommodating and comfortable with the idea of not necessarily that it's going to happen, but or should I say not going to happen with every character, but you may, as we're diving more into this multiverse stuff, see varying takes on characters that you already know, that might look different, might sound different, might be completely the same, just slightly tweaked. I think they're just like really ramming the idea home that, and this isn't a spoiler, but in the same way that in Endgame you had the portal scene where everybody was coming through to help, you can very easily see the idea that they are kind of planting the seeds of if there is a multiverse level threat, realistically they're probably going to have to pull lots of people from lots of different universes. And it's a concept that we're familiar with as sort of fans of sci-fi or fiction in general, I suppose. But some people might look at it and be in 3 years' time, when the next Avengers film comes out, they might be like, well, why is this version of Thor wearing a toga? And you're like, well, anything goes.
Yeah, because it's more slutty.
In that universe, everyone wears togas. And is that a little bit confusing? Might you ask why? Yes. Is there an answer? Probably not, but that's just the way things are with the multiverse. And I think that ultimately this show does accomplish at least that. I think it's presenting lots of different takes of different characters and being like, all of these exist and they are all doing their own things, and things play out in different ways in different universes. And that's a concept that a lot of people might struggle with if they aren't familiar with these kind of narrative tropes in fiction.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's almost like just training people to understand this stuff piece by piece. And I think it's smart. I assume that they're going to still have to do work once they introduce it into like the mainline story, because there's going to be people that haven't seen this.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But I do think that they're like trying to kind of ease people into it, so it's like less jarring for those that put the time in to watch everything. I will say, I was laughing so hard when I can't remember the exact line, but when Doctor Strange is like, like, what did he say about like his magic powers? He's like, "Oh, now comes stuff that like doesn't really happen," or I can't remember what he says, but it cracked me up
I know what you
because
mean. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, they for sure just broke the magic system,"
Mm,
and they're acknowledging it immediately, which is a good way to do it. Like, yeah, hey, we know that this isn't part of the magic system. We're doing it anyways.
yeah.
I thought that was really funny. Too bad that they don't do that in Fantastic Beasts because that would have been really funny. I wish I could remember the exact quote. Episode 9 of What If. I'll Google this. Okay. So now let's talk about like overall. So like ranking, where would you put this? What did you think of like the show overall wise, stuff like that?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what I said at the start. Like, it's undeniably good. Like, all the content here is good. It's animated well. The voice acting is done well. They do lots of novel things, stuff we haven't seen before, both in terms of tone and storytelling and visuals and all of that. Like, all of it is good. It just ultimately is less than the sum of its parts. I think there is a version of this show that is demonstrably better if there was that sense of momentum and cohesion from the get-go. Yeah, I think it's so hard to really land somewhere specifically with this show because there are really great elements. There are so many good things about it, but I think it ultimately underwhelms at the end of the day. I think what I will say as a first foray into animation for Marvel, I think it's not necessarily a full-on triumph, but I think it's a very strong start.
Mm-hmm.
For a studio that hasn't done animation before. I think that coming out of the gate with this is a very reassuring sign. And obviously they are still committing to it. We know there's another season of What If to watch eventually, and we know, because it's airing as we speak. Like, they've rebooted or are continuing the old X-Men animated series. Marvel Zombies is happening. There are other animated shows in the works. So I like that they are committing to different types of storytelling in different mediums. I like that. I think Marvel certainly has the breadth of that in terms of character, in terms of story, in terms of scope. Now that they've introduced multiversal concepts, I think that it's smart of them, and I just like seeing new stuff from them. And animation is a very good way of doing that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that what people miss a lot of the times with animated stuff is that animation allows you to do a lot of things that like live action, CGI, whatever it is, just does not allow you to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's in the same way that like there are so many limitations with like doing stuff live action that just don't exist in animation. And I think that that's a lot of the times what makes animated shows so compelling for me is because those limitations just don't really exist. It's like, what's the budget? How long do we have to animate this? Is the limitations essentially. So I do love that Marvel did this. I love that it's an animated show. I hope there's more animated shows beyond just What If. I don't know, but
There is.
I hope there is. Oh, good. Oh boy. Um, yeah. Maybe we'll see more tentacles. We saw them 3 times. Just saying.
3 times too many.
Listen, I get it. There's like some sort of weird compulsion when you're animating to put tentacles in the episodes. I get it. I don't know where that compulsion comes from besides anime, and specifically the history of porn in Japan, but what can you do? So where would you put this in your list?
I'm gonna just come out right off the bat. It's gonna be quite low, which is sad and sounds maybe contradictory in terms of some of the glowing stuff I've said about it. But I think the fact that it doesn't feel cohesive enough is a really big detraction, considering that is kind of like the whole shebang with the MCU.
My guess is 24.
24.
That's my guess.
No joke, it is 24 on the list. That is fair play. You got it. I'm not. This isn't a bit. It is 24. I wrote it before we started recording. It is 24. So just underneath the first Avenger.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like I think as you get further down the list, because I think once you get to the upper part of the list, you're talking about just intrinsic like quality and how good is this thing. When you get lower down the list, it's like all of this stuff is still fine to good, but it's when I'm determining what goes down to the bottom half of the list, it's what would I prefer to watch, this or that, and that determines where things rank. Because all of this stuff, as we get down to the bottom, is like it's fine. So which would I prefer to watch? And that's why it's above Ant-Man and the Wasp, because I really have no interest in watching that film again. But I would watch First Avenger again. I don't think so. We can agree to disagree, though. That's fine.
I don't think it's that good. It's Ant-Man and the Wasp is number 26 on my list. So
damn, it's even lower.
Yeah. Okay, where do you think this one lands for me?
I'm going to imagine it's higher than where I've got it, but not by much.
Okay.
I'm going to say, with no context of where exactly things are on your list, and I don't want the context. I'm going to say 21.
Ooh, you're really close. 21 currently is Iron Man, and then 22 is Iron Man 2. So I put it under those two because I would much prefer to watch either of those. Much prefer to watch either.
So yours is 23 currently.
23 for What If, and then directly below it is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because I don't want to watch that ever again.
Damn.
No, thank you. So, yeah.
But like that sounds really bad for What If, but it's like it's just there's so much stiff competition, and
is there
everything else manages to do stuff that What If just doesn't quite manage to do. So I'd still recommend the show to people.
Yeah, there's good pieces in it. It's just like I think the overall execution just didn't quite make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What are we watching next?
Aren't you going to be a happy bunny?
I am.
Because you already know.
Yeah.
We are watching Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Okay, you guys. I don't want to be dramatic, but I am going to preemptively add to my simp list. Simu Liu is a very handsome man. So I'm going to add him to my list.
Can he be a leading man? We shall see.
I'm adding it to my simp list, and it's going number 1 above Loki. So
damn, that is a bold statement.
Is it?
I don't know. I think.
Is Simu Liu not extremely handsome?
I mean,
you've seen him as Ken now. You have no excuses.
Yeah, but you're asking a hetero dude. He's like, I there is no denying that he is an attractive man,
Uh-huh.
but like above Loki, man, I don't know. I'm not
Maybe
sure on that
not.
one.
Maybe n- maybe not after season 2 of Loki.
Okay.
There's a scene specifically that I'm waiting for. And after we watch that, that will probably make me giggle and will probably rot my brain. And then it will probably move Loki back to 1. But as of this
Okay.
moment, Loki is
That's
number 2.
fine. That's fine.
So, listen, you've already seen. I mean, I technically have 2 on TikTok because of my algorithms. But you've already seen this crazy scene with Loki. So, you're in a different spot.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm excited to watch this movie.
Is it any good? We shall see.
Yeah, 2 hours. That's a long movie. 2 hours and 12 minutes, you guys. Oh, hey, the person who played Zuko in the Avatar live action is in it. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's almost like you're spoiling yourself by looking at the cast already. That's crazy.
I didn't. It's just sitting here on Google.
But how do you know the cast then?
Because it's like when you Google like Shang-Chi, the first thing that came up is like the cast, and I saw the guy's face. I was like, oh my god, look.
I see.
I don't even know his character name. I just know his face because he's an Avatar.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Well, you guys, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. Special shout out to our current patrons. We have Alpaca Tom, Fabulous Brianna, Brianna's mom, Brianna's brother, Lindsay, Nikolai at Night, Cypher Primus, Brendan Myers, Marcus O'Neill, Lillian, Mimi J, David Hartright, Dave Harp, the Xbox Expansion Pass, and Lee Navarro. Sam, where can people find you?
Anywhere and everywhere at Sam Heaney, Heaney,
including OnlyFans. You can find
That's
me
true.
at Fabulous Brianna, FabulastBrianna. Thanks for hanging out with us, you guys. We will see you in don't know how much time our time, but in 2 weeks your time. So see you then.